I'm going to start with the assumption that most of you are new to family law software. And if you have questions, again, just let me know. So here we go. This is the beginning screen of family law software for Ohio. And it always starts with entering data for child support purposes. I think this is a good place to start, even if you are have adult children, no minors, or no children at all. It's a really good place to start. Now, actually, you'll start at the file manager place because you'll either be starting a new file or picking one of your old files and loading it. So the file manager is a newer feature, and it allows you to sort and find things really easily. You can look at the other files of people in your office if you have the cloud edition. Shared files are those files that you had the client complete their data entry online. So in this case, I'm just using sample data. I'm going to close the file manager. So this is all made up data by me. It was fun making these creative facts. Across the top, you'll notice what you're doing, or the file name. You'll notice that there's a results screen here. As we change variables in this data entry set, this number automatically updates. There's nothing you need to do. You don't have to hit enter to cause this number to update. This is incredibly useful when you are sharing your screen with your client and want to answer their questions and show them what their what if questions mean. How does it change the outcome? Sometimes this makes the conversation much more efficient, and the client gets the point sooner than later. And instead of telling them about it, you've shown them. I Zoom with my clients and share this screen all the time. Okay, so you'll notice there's a quick entry. This is this is for when you're maybe doing an initial consultation over the phone, and they're asking you what's the approximate number. You can do this in a quick and dirty way. Well, it's not really dirty. It's just it's not complete. John, this is the cloud version. Good question. Since you mentioned it, I really encourage you to use the cloud version rather than the desktop. It's updated constantly. It's behind the scenes. You don't realize that things are constantly being updated. It backs up all your data, so you don't need to worry about your server having backups and that sort of thing. And we're going to eventually, family law software is going to eventually stop supporting the desktop version. So I would encourage you to move away from it as you use the software. There's a couple things that the desktop version does. Well, one thing that I know of, which is you can print reports in landscape on the desktop version. So occasionally I use it for that purpose, but I believe that's going to be rectified in coming updates. So good question, John. I just think it's best to use the cloud version. And that's what I'm used to now. Anyway, back to the screen. The quick version is quick. You can get a result up here by putting in about 8 data points. The children, their date of birth, the amount of income each party makes, and and that alone will give you a result, and then health insurance, dental, and whether there's spousal support, and you've got a result that's going to be pretty close, pretty accurate for most purposes. But if you're doing something for court or opposing counsel or something somebody's going to sign, obviously use the complete version. Current guidelines is simply the House Bill 366 version. If you need to go back in time to look at what child support would have been under the old guidelines, you just deselect that, and it went to $19 a month when I selected that. That's interesting. Okay, and then if you want to put the 2% processing fee on your guideline worksheet, your report, you can click this button. I'd recommend you do that. Taxability of spousal support. Obviously, our default now is that it's not deductible and it's not income, but you can deselect here these buttons, and then you would be turning yourself back in time to, well, what was it, 2017. So beginning, again, whether you have minor children or not, this is a good place to start. You can put in children and make them not age eligible by deselecting these buttons. So this screen is a lot of things are happening here. Not just the children's names, but dates of birth. This is critical if you have any work-related childcare, because you have age-banded work-related childcare limits from the legislature, and the software is going to calculate each child's age in months and automatically select the right limit for work-related childcare. And this is all explained here. Obviously, if children are over 17, you can't get a tax credit either. So another reason that you want to put in their birth dates. These little blue question mark bubbles, as you can see, are everywhere. And anytime you're getting lost, or you feel like you're not sure what's going on, or why we're asking you to fill in this blank, just click on it, and you'll get an answer. By the way, this button, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. The button I clicked was what I call the overnight extrapolator. Calculate pairing time for overnights above 90, and we say it's not in the statute. You probably all know that the statute says above 90 nights, it's pretty much a case-by-case basis. You get to 147 nights, then the trier of fact has to make findings of fact and conclusions of law about why they did or did not apply an additional adjustment for overnights in that situation. So this button, when you select it, is simply extending the adjustment from 90 nights up to the whatever number of nights you'll have in your case. You can obviously deselect it, and now it's going to the 10% adjustment, because there's more than 90 overnights in this scenario. The 10% adjustment is applied, but nothing further. And the math that we use to do that is explained right here, and it's really very simple. From 90 to 180 is another 90 nights, and we apply a 1% additional deviation for each overnight. Obviously, there's 182 and a half or 83 and a half, but we stop at 180. It gets pretty ridiculous to slice things even thinner than that. One thing you should know is that you can actually put in precise equalization. You can put in 182.5 overnights, and you would do that right here. You could just and it automatically should calculate the other side. Yeah, so we've got absolute equal parenting time for this child named Reese, and the Kim is apparently not seeing Blake at all. This resulted in a split custody worksheet. It's important you watch that. As you change these numbers, as soon as one child is with one parent more than the other child's with the other parent, the software is going to convert to a split custody worksheet. Some courts will accept that. Other courts will say, no, you can't do that. You have to do two worksheets, one where you assume that both children are with father, and the adjustments for overnights are parent A, if it's same-sex couple, whatever. And then you do another worksheet where you assume that the other parent is the recipient of or obligor of child support. And then you take those two worksheets and you net them out. I think that's pretty cumbersome. I think that the split custody worksheet is a more equitable and fair way to approach this, but that's just John Zoller's opinion. This is how the software works. So I hope anybody, if you're doing this, you get how to enter data. These yellow fields are fields that you put data in, and as you'll see in a minute, blue data fields are fields that the software has already filled in for you. And while you can override or type over the data in a blue field, I strongly recommend against it. So continuing on, birthdays, guideline for custody simply means who's the recipient of child support. And again, you can find that out by clicking the blue button. Tax dependency, very important because the credit flows with that. Right now, we've got, again, a split custody worksheet. So each of them are going to get a child credit. When you have, and this is just a practice pointer, let's say we've got complete parity for both children. What do you do then? Well, I would say that you can leave the calculator the way it is, but in your shared parenting plan, you should specify that for purposes of tax credits or dependency exemption, it shall be presumed that one child is spending at least one additional night with one parent, and the other is spending at least one additional night with the other parent per year, so that they can legitimately file as head of household and claim the child credit. If you have any questions about that, you can raise your hand, put it in the Q&A, or call me later. So there's another way to fill out these forms, and that's by clicking the little bed icon, and then you can just put in overnights as you know them, or how the clients have presented it to you. There's this little green ellipse box is on the desktop version. This would be the more information button. And in this example, it's not critical to fill it in, but you do want to recognize that if you're doing any sort of forecasting for your clients, step downs for child support, for example, the default, you want to turn it to 18 for Ohio. Obviously, you can do it to other ages if you want. But for purposes of the expiration of child support and forecasting, you want to change that. And again, that was in the green ellipse box called more information on the desktop version. Okay, so, and then deleting a child, it's a sad state when you have to do that, right? So whether you have children or not, you want to start here. You want to put in at least the children and say not age eligible. I just think that's a good practice to do that. I'm going to move on from this screen. If there aren't any questions, I'm going to deselect this. Go to wages and filing status. This is the fastest way to start filling in data. If you're trying to calculate a spousal support outcome, this is the place to put in your client's income and where they work. And again, their fields are all yellow. You can see that right now, because we had an equal parenting time and the fiction that I mentioned, both parties are as head of household. Sometimes you want to use this and you want to say that the parties are still married because it's pre-decree and it's December 31st, and you can do a better tax calculation for them if they're going to file jointly for the year that's expiring. And you'll notice they change automatically when you change the filing status. Here's the link to calculating high income cases. Right now, it is not extrapolating, and then in this example, the couple doesn't have a combined income in excess of 336. But if you wanted to, if they did, you would click this box and the software would extrapolate the child support guideline table up to the amount of the party's combined gross income. You'll notice there are two ways to do that, the marginal and average rate. We recommend the marginal rate, and when you click on this, it explains that. You know, there used to be a button here about explaining why we recommend the marginal rate, and it has to do with the math that the table is based on and extrapolating it in that fashion rather than just averaging it above the cap. There are child support enforcement agencies that use the average rate when they extrapolate upwards, Lorain County being one of them. If your numbers aren't matching, this might be the reason. And I believe there's good reason to argue against the average rate if you're, for example, in an administrative review forum, so to speak. So again, that's right there, the high income case. Wage-like income, you can put any sort of income in here you want. I just threw in Uber driving, maybe there's some trust income, unemployment comp, bonuses. I always like to talk about bonuses. Again, all these fields are yellow, so you can enter data in them. Averaging the past 3 years of overtime commissions and bonuses go here. This is retrospective. This is looking at the past, what happened. This does not take the average and presume that that will occur in the future years. So if you are trying to calculate a future net after tax spendable cash ratio or outcome, it's important that you put what you anticipate the bonuses to be in the future down here. This is letting the court know that it's anticipated that $5,000 bonus will continue into the future. That will doesn't affect child support, but it does affect net after tax spendable cash. This is a good time to talk about these footnote buttons. You'll see that they're clear, and this one's opaque. That's our visual clue that there is a footnote there. And we can click on it and say, no bonus for 2020 due to COVID. So what have we just done? We've created a footnote, and we've told whoever looks at this report that there's no bonus for 2020, and we've said why. So I encourage people to use the footnote buttons early and often. It's a great way to tell a story. It's coloring outside of the box. It's room for advocacy in the guidelines themselves. Again, we've got an ellipse for more information. If you were to know what future income, future bonuses are going to be, because it's in an employment contract, for example, you could come in here and include those projections going forward. Well, I guess I should show you too that there's our first example of blue data screens. So those would get populated once you put in other information. So this is more information. I get a lot of questions about where do you put in Social Security from one parent. It's right here, received based on the parent's own record, or well, which parent? The one based on the parent's own record or the other parent's record. That usually results, if somebody is receiving derivative Social Security disability benefits, it usually results in there being no additional child support due. But this is where you would include that, and we've got explanations here. Deductions, this is the next most important screen when you're doing this, because we always have to have a health insurance obligor. And you start up here. As soon as you put a number in either of these boxes, the software will assign a healthcare obligor label. It is possible to put in the amounts for the other parent. Sometimes clients need to do that just to be appeased, and you can show them what difference it makes to the guideline worksheet. If Blake has to pay $500 a month, it doesn't change the child support a whole lot from 566. It didn't change it at all. Lots more data fields. Childcare. This is the work-related childcare screen I mentioned. You see all these blue fields are calculated by the software. In this instance, we have Kim paying $12,000 a year, or Taylor's paying $12,000 a year for Kim's childcare, and $9,900 for Reese, and Blake isn't paying anything. So we exceed the cap in this example, and the maximum allowable cost is 27290. That's from the statute or the guidelines manual. And you click on that, and here are those age bands that I mentioned earlier. If I think that a high quality representation would call for you to examine these things, because if you're negotiating the resolution of a case and the child is 2 years and 10 months old, you probably should just go to the next band if you're limiting the cost of childcare. So that you don't automatically have an incorrect guideline worksheet months after you've settled the matter or presented your evidence. I hope that made sense to everyone. Lots of blue question marks to tell more about the story. I can tell you when I was going around the state showing people how to use the software when House Bill 366 went into effect, people were aghast at these limits. They think that they're completely wrong and way too low, and nobody can get child support for $11,000 a year when you've got a kid in diapers. So you can override those maximum allowables. You can override that and have it carry through. I don't know of any case law that addresses that question and how well it's received by courts, but the software will allow you to use the actual amount of over out-of-pocket costs rather than the maximum allowable under the statute. It is also, so you can override it here, or you could use that as a deviation factor, which we get to later on in this same screen. So again, just to review, we put in the children's names and their date of birth and how many nights they were with each parent. We put in wages and filing status. Filing status was already determined by how we completed the children's overnights. We looked at wage-like income, and now we're in deductions. A lot of people, you're going to skip this one altogether because they just don't have any other income. If they're just straight W-2 wage earners, you're going to go here, here, and straight to deductions. There are three important parts: obviously healthcare obligor and the out-of-pocket cost, work-related childcare, and then worksheet for deviations. Yes, I skipped over spousal support. This is a placeholder. You don't have to put anything in here. Obviously, if you don't put anything in here, it's going to affect child support, or it should. Yeah, there we go. Went up to $889. Sometimes I'll just put in $1 so that there is a number in the field. We'll be changing that later. Few miscellaneous fields from days gone by. Prior relationships, spousal support. Good God, hope you don't have one of those. Here's the worksheet for deviations. It follows the statute exactly because we have a split custody worksheet right now. There's a set of deviations for each parent, and that of course gets complicated when you're doing puts and takes on each side. The software is going to net out those deviation adjustments for you. And again, they're blue fields, they're calculated. There is right here, line 10, extraordinary work-related expenses. So you could put in this field the amount of the work-related child care expenses the parties have for a child that exceeds the cap. and thereby create a deviation. And if you were doing that, I would recommend putting in a footnote explaining exactly what you're doing and why. Remember that the Child Support Enforcement Agency under House Bill 366 has the ability to carry forward deviations in child support if it's clear from the record what the deviation was, either the amount or the percentage. So if you put that in here and you tell the story in a footnote, there's no way the Support Enforcement Agency in an administrative review can't find what the deviation was and why. Of course, this is a bad example because this is age banded, and an administrative review happens once every 3 years unless there's some other circumstance. So that's a bad example about carrying forward deviations, but others might persist indefinitely. So I'm going to look at the Q&A. Do we have any questions about deviations? Doesn't look like it. Again, this follows the statute, and medical deviation, boy, if you're not deviating cash medical to zero, I'd love to know why. Let me know. I deviate cash medical to zero in every one of my cases. I have yet to meet the parent who's going to keep track of those nickels and dimes, and it's just easier to start accounting for out-of-pocket uncovered medical expenses from $1 rather than after some arbitrary statutory figure. Nobody does that. Okay, so this is the 3 places: health insurance, work-related child care, and potential deviations in the deductions section. And once you've gotten through this, you have a very valid child support guideline result. I'm going to close this set of data points and just introduce you to the others. Hopefully, we all want to have clients who have data for this screen, right? We want clients who have interest income, dividend income, capital gains, all that stuff. Take it right off their tax returns. You know, if there's a huge investment account being divided, then you're going to take the last year's, well, this is probably a bad example in our current economy, but you might take the income from dividends and interest and divide it in half and put it in both parties' columns. I do that when there's a substantial amount of investment income. I get people grousing about it because they just don't want to see it there. But it is compliant with the statute. You are supposed to report that if it's recurring and going into the future. So here we have the investment accounts, business income. This is part of the spot where you could put in self-employed income. There's different ways to do it. You can just put in a number, or you can create a simple income and expense worksheet for the business. And I'm going to click on this button right here to show you what that does. The software has created a template for you. You're going to put in the gross receipts for the business, probably put in an annual number, and then you're going to go through their balance sheet and put in numbers that you think are accurate. I can tell you that most self-employed obligors have a creative approach to their business expenses, and that they are not always truly related to business. And this is a place where, again, you can demonstrate your advocacy by putting in the number that you think is the real number. And then you can tell the rest of the story by saying the company pays for a Corvette that is not used in the business. So what have you done? You've told the court when you print the footnotes that there's a number here that might have been on the company's balance sheet, but you're rejecting it and you're explaining why. the most common one I see is Costco. The business has a Costco card because they buy their paper for their copier there, but they also buy wine and groceries for home. And so there's always a little adjustment you might make. And again, you can put in Costco and put in a footnote telling the court about how that affects the gross income of the business. The software is going to do the calculations for you, fill in the rest. You can print this by clicking a PDF and have a very nice exhibit for the court on what you think the business's real income and expenses are, all within doing the child support guideline worksheet. So there's more to be done in entering a business. You would actually do that in the assets and liabilities section of entering data right here, assets and debts. I'll just jump over there quickly and show you that there is a business here. And if we open it, it's the same data that you saw in that previous screen. And you don't see a lot here. But if you have a business that is both a source of income and an asset, you'll want to go to more information and brace yourself. There's a lot of data here to enter. You can do the business valuation either in the software or carry it over from a report. The software is going to calculate income for you. It's going to do projections as to future growth, who's going to receive that income, and it becomes very, very detailed. If you get to some of these fields and it's relevant in your case, and you don't have an accounting background, I would strongly recommend you become friends with a CPA who will take your calls, because I think that it's just invaluable to get a second opinion when you're dealing with these issues. So again, how did I get there? I was in business interests. We have one building, a business, and I clicked more information to get to all of this granular detail about the business and how to appropriately account for it in the software. And this all, of course, carries forward to all of the other reports and analysis that the software does. So I left, just to make sure you guys know where I was going, I left child support data and jumped down here to show you that you can enter the business here. And if you go through and fill out all the forms, including the cash flow, that will carry over to the child support calculation. There's nothing more you need to do. So you don't do it in both places. I'm going to go back to child support data. And here we are back where we started. Got some rental income, pension income, 401k contributions. This is, again, you can enter this data here, but if it's an asset that's throwing off income, I prefer personally to enter it in the asset and debt section because the fields are more comprehensive and you're doing a better job for your client if you put in more of the detail and relevant facts there. So we're at the end of the child support calculation set of information. So again, we're at enter data, child support data. We worked our way down here. We've got to this use the child support to use in the budget report, what if screens, and cash flow projections. This is important because the cash flow projections is what you really are doing if you've got somebody who's talking about allocating, net after tax spendable cash. So you can click on here and put in a child support number that you want to use. The default, of course, is what the calculated number is. But if you have a couple that have agreed to a different number, you can stop using that number and you can put in your own. And this is a form of overriding it. So you see when I deselected this box, the amount became a yellow field. If I select it again, it's a calculated field. You can put in the expected emancipation date for future cash flow. If you're doing projections, I really recommend you do put in the anticipated emancipation date. You can do step downs. I talked about that before. If you've got multiple children, you can put in when they start aging out, and the software will calculate the new amount when that happens. I would caution you to use that with a grain of salt, because by the time those things happens, usually other factors will have changed as well. But if your client wants to know, the software can do that for them. This screen is the same as the child support to use for budget and what if screens, but it's for spousal support. I will typically, if it's a case where spousal support is going to happen, this is where I'd put in that dollar, and I'd so that it carries over to the not only the child support calculation, but the analysis screen. So we have a place setter there. You don't have to, but I find it helpful. So let's say you know that this is going to be $1,000 a month. It started in October of this year, and it's going to go for 10 years. So we're going to go 09 to 2032. You will see that the software automatically, if you put in the amount, the beginning and end date, you'll always automatically be calculating the present value of that obligation. And that can be very appealing to people who would like to give up more of their 401k so that they don't have to pay spousal support, or walk away from the equity in the house and use the equity in the house as a lump sum contribution for spousal support. Well, this is where you'd evaluate whether that equity is adequate to pay off that obligation. Again, there's you can change the interest rates, and that might be appropriate as interest rates continue to rise in our current economy. But right now we have a default, and we explain why. And this number, again, is updated. I think it's monthly. The cloud version will be updating that monthly for you. You have to manually update your desktop software in order to cause that to change. And I have, a 20-year Treasury bond rate is extraordinarily conservative. So this rate of return is, or the discount rate is very, very conservative. The fact is that you can go find a place to put your money that's going to make more than 1.26%. So keep that in mind if you're negotiating this number. You can look at a detailed explanation of the present value. I've actually had people ask me for this. I've never had a judge ask me for it, but opposing counsel or their consultant have asked for it. And once they've seen it, I've usually had them accept it without any argument. So we're really done entering data for child support for now. And you notice that $1,000 a month changed the guideline amount a little bit. So it's important for you to recognize that we've been entering data, and now we want to see, what does it mean? What have we done by entering this data? Well, at the very bottom of that entering data, you can go to the guideline worksheet, and that's going to jump you to what should look familiar to you. And we've actually gone to reports when we click that hyperlink, and we're looking at the child support guideline worksheet. It's the same thing, just two different ways to get there. Now, there's some things about our worksheet and the software that you really need to know. First of all, you can type in these yellow fields, and the case number is really not the case number. The case number in this context is the SETS number, the Support Enforcement Tracking System. And so that's the long number that begins with a 7 if you've got a case file established with CSEA. The order number is really your legal court case number. So make sure you differentiate that. I mean, a lot of people will look at this and recognize it as a court case number and ignore that it's in the wrong spot. But you don't want to put the sets number over here. That would throw people off. Okay, so you'll see that there are very few yellow fields in the guideline worksheet. This one is long and complicated because we're still looking at a split custody worksheet, so keep that in mind. The next yellow field is other income. This is our idea of a sense of humor. We don't think this line should exist, and when the CSEA revises the guideline worksheet, we think it will go away. And the reason for that is that if you look at the definition of 311901 C12, you will see that all income is to be placed there, including spousal support being exchanged in this case. There are counties where they want you to split that out, and they want to see the spousal support amount being paid in this case on the child support guideline worksheet at line 6. I have had people call me because they're in a battle with CSEA about this very issue. I can tell you from a Cuyahoga County standpoint, our CSEA has now acquiesced, I should say, and they accept the fact that the definition for income is in the statute includes the payment of spousal support. So I did something without telling you what I was doing. You'll notice there's a hot link right here. I want you to click on that in any case where your parties have any income other than W-2 income, because these numbers will not make sense to anyone, and nobody will know where these numbers come from, and it will be very difficult to determine whether there's been a change in circumstance sufficient for a modification. You need to know the source of these numbers, and it's not going to match up to W-2s. And here's why. We've got spousal support coming over to Blake's column for income. We've got other wage-light income. That's that consulting income from the business we talked about. We've got some Uber driving money here. We've got investment income. Holy cow. Taylor's loaded. She's got $24,000 a year in income. Well, you know, nobody's going to know what that was in a subsequent review if you don't go to this income worksheet and print it out and attach it to your guidelines worksheet. You need to leave a trail for those who come after you, even if it's your own client looking at things later, wondering, why does it say I have 130,000 in income? I don't have 130,000 in income. And you can say, well, Taylor, if you look at the worksheet attached to your guideline worksheet, you'll see where that number comes from. Or you can explain that to the CSEA worker who's doing the administrative review 3 years later. So always print this worksheet out and attach it to your guideline worksheet. Moving down, again, there's lots of blue question mark bubbles to give you information. There's 3 worksheets within this worksheet. Let me stop for a second. I want you to see this, the rate applied to the extrapolated income. You see that twice because this is a split custody worksheet. This is a nice way to negotiate a high income case. So if this were a high income case and we had extrapolated at the marginal rate, there would be a number there. But you'll notice that you can override that number. And this is a great place to negotiate what the extrapolation should be. Instead of using, so for example, if a straight extrapolation results in a number that's really too large because children just don't need to have $50,000 a month in child support, you can negotiate by changing the rate to a lower rate and end up with a specific extrapolation number showing up in your guidelines. I hope that makes sense. I'm going to check the Q&A box here again. We don't have any questions. There's still 14 of you here. Okay, that's good. Haven't lost everybody. Second worksheet is the work-related childcare worksheet. Another hot link to the worksheet that you've already seen. I would strongly suggest hitting a PDF of this and attaching it to your guideline worksheet as well, because you know that number is going to change. As a child gets older, this number is going to change. And so what flows to the worksheet is going to change. I would always attach that guideline, that childcare worksheet to your guideline worksheet if you have any work-related childcare income. And then the last, well, that's the same link. The last hot link within the child support guideline worksheet is the deviation worksheet. And again, you got to print this out and attach it, because nobody's going to know what your deviation was. What they might know that there's a number, but they're not going to know that it was for extraordinary childcare costs, because you know that number is going to expire. And this is also where you can deviate for cash medical. You'll see that 920 is in red. What that tells you is that that's an override of a calculated number. So anytime you type in a blue field, you're going to see a red override signal. It's just a visual clue that had been done. So there you have your guidelines worksheet. Because it's a split custody worksheet, obviously there's going to be more than 2 pages. You can jump back and forth to change the filing status. You can jump back and forth to change the overnights. If you really don't want to use a split custody worksheet, you can come here and go so now we lose the split custody worksheet, the number changes. And when we go to the child support guideline worksheet, which I'm going to just do quickly from down here, now we have a 2-page worksheet. And you'll see that even the deviation page is simpler, because there aren't 2 of them. It's just 1 page. So the other way to get to the child support guideline worksheet is by going to reports. Reports are what it sounds like. Think about it literally. The reports are the result of the data entry. It's a bad idea to type data in when you're in the reports section. You can put in a note here that would print with the worksheet. I think there's one at the bottom as well. No, there isn't. So this is obviously the first report you'd use to do child support. There's the 3 worksheets within the worksheets. We have other forms, and this webinar is really about the affidavits that we can do. I spent a lot of time on child support, but I want you to be aware that there are other forms. These court forms are some miscellaneous job and family services forms. We've got the application for child support services, also known as the Title 4D services application. I believe, or it's my understanding, that courts throughout Ohio require these to be filled out by both parties. So here's a way to do that. As you fill in data here, the software will automatically populate that field to the extent the data is relevant. And then you can go in and finish filling out the form for your clients. I clicked the wrong box, so this one isn't really, could be printed and then typed on. Let me go back here. Now we have a form fillable PDF, and you can fill it out, and you can see names, dates of birth. If we had put in addresses, that stuff would have all been filled out from your data entry. And we have had clients just sit down at a computer in our office to fill these out if we're in a hurry to get a case filed and we need to have this ready when we begin the case. There is a way for the clients to do data entry online. If we have time or anyone's interested, I can show you. That's really outside the scope of today's webinar. Wage withholding form 1. So this is a JFS form. It is used in every case in Franklin County, Columbus. This saves a lot of verbiage in the judgment entry. In Cuyahoga County, we put all of the verbiage in this order in our judgment entries itself. This is the way you can print it out, or excuse me, fill it out, because you see all the yellow fields. But to show you just quickly what it looks like, we'll do it this way. And now we have that Form 1 that is used by all of the Central Ohio family lawyers who use family law software. Okay. The last one is a child support affidavit. So this form, I asked that the software be included in the software because there are courts in Ohio that require it. I'm trying to think of one. I think Wayne County might require it, but this is a beautiful affidavit, and it gives the court a lot of the information it needs to determine a child support outcome. If it's a simpler case and it's really just about child support, there's no spousal support, you just got to get something done. I think magistrates would love seeing this affidavit more often. And so I would encourage using this or exploring the use of it. And again, there's nothing wrong with using it. It's a Supreme Court form. It's a Department of Job and Family Services form. So you're not making things up here. You're using the forms that we've all been told should be used. Okay, so going back, so that was the court forms. The financial affidavits are the 5 Supreme Court forms that you're all accustomed to using. The software is going to automatically populate the data fields in these affidavits, and there's the income and expense, very important for temporary matters as well as final hearings. The affidavit of property, always a good idea to print this out. You know, you might even have a client sign that as a matter of course, just to have in your file so that you know what the client told you the property situation was. You know, just for your own protection and due diligence, you might print this out and keep it in your own file. When I'm negotiating either in a collaborative or sometimes in mediation, I'll have my client fill this out and provide it to the other side so that they have a sworn statement by the client that they've made full disclosure. Parenting proceeding information affidavit and health insurance affidavits, mandatory in every case. If you don't use one of these, you have invested the court with jurisdiction to do a darn thing for the children. We make it really easy for you to complete this information. Obviously, this part is filled out in another place in the software, but the last little bits are all yellow and you'd fill them out here. And so this I'm assuming looks very familiar to all of you, the health insurance affidavit, tedious little things. The software allows you to produce one for both parties when you're doing a dissolution and only one party is represented. You know, the court wants one of these from both sides, so you've got to prepare one for the other side. I typically will have a paralegal call the other party and walk through these affidavits over the phone so that the data gets entered accurately. And the last one is the temporary orders motion. I like this one a lot. I use it a lot. Well, I did when I did litigation. Data separation, super important. Places to tell the story. You can add lines here. You can start typing and it's not limited to that line. You can hit here and just keep going. You can make it bold. Again, telling the story to the court about why you're there and what you're asking for. I think that this is so much better than using just the form itself. It gives you the chance to literally color outside of the box. And then lastly, we have a few more forms, or one more form, the support withholding order. This is again a JFS form. It's like the job and family, or the Form 1. Again, in Cuyahoga County, we put all of this information in our judgment entries, but in other counties, they don't. They issue one of these. And in some counties, the court fills this out for the parties. you don't even realize it's being done. But in this case, you could supply it to the court with your file or your final paperwork. Integration with DocuSign. No, not at the moment, John. Great question and a good idea. That, if you have Adobe Sign, obviously you can make all of these PDFs signable electronically. If you have Clio now has a proprietary electronic signature feature, and you could take this document through your Clio process and have it signed that way. Great question. And I think, as many of you probably know, Family Law Software is now part of Centerbase, which is a comprehensive law office management and a bookkeeping, time tracking suite of tools. It is originally designed for the mid-sized firms, 25 to 100 lawyers. They are developing things all the time, and it won't surprise me as Family Law Software becomes more and more integrated into Centerbase, we might see these become e-signable. I may even pass that suggestion along, John. Thank you for it. So other features of the software, we've got a couple. Well, we've got 1 minute left. I love the budget report. I think you should look at it all the time. I think you should show it to your clients. It's a side-by-side story of the income and assets of both parties. If you've filled out both sides' expense information, in this case I haven't, then you have a really valid solution down here for what they have left over at the end of the month. And if this were the real picture, you'd be saying to the clients, you're living beyond your means and you're going to be in debt and bankrupt very soon. If these are positive numbers and they are close to the same, you've got an equitable or even possibly equal outcome of a budget. Here's an example of how the footnotes print. So that's probably useful. And I think I'll stop there. Wait for a minute to see if there are any more questions. I want to thank you very much for joining this webinar. I believe a recording will be available at familylawsoftware.com in the near future. And please look for additional notices for future webinars